This episode of To The Point is sponsored by Tarsus. Tarsus Pharmaceuticals applies proven science and new technology to revolutionize treatment for patients, starting with eye care. Tarsus is advancing its pipeline to address several diseases with high unmet need across a range of therapeutic categories, including eye care, dermatology, and infectious disease prevention. Tarsus is proud to announce that Xdemvy Lotilaner Ophthalmic Solution 0.25% is now available to prescribe. Support for this podcast is provided by TearCare, a product of Sight Sciences. TearCare is a device that applies heat to the eyelids, where the current medical community recommends the application of a warm compress to the eyelids. Applications include meibomian gland dysfunction, MGD, dry eye, or blepharitis.
Ocular surface disease. It's complex, chronic, and progressive, but rife with opportunity for the enterprising optometrist.
The mission of this podcast is to make this condition more understandable and accessible to those interested in specializing in it. So let's get to the point. Welcome to another episode of the To The Point podcast. My name is Jackie Garlick, and I am joined by my co-host Leslie Odell. And today we are joined by optometrist to the stars, Dr. Cam Solani. Dr. Solani is the Chief Clinical Director of Beverly Hills Optometry. Approximately 10 years ago, he proudly started their Advanced Dry Eye Center of Beverly Hills, California. As a second-generation eye care specialist, his high-tech practice focuses on utilizing office-based devices to properly diagnose and treat patients for various ocular conditions, most notably ocular surface disease. In the optometric community, Dr. Solani's modern approach toward the treatment of MGD, dry eye disease, ocular rosacea, and blepharitis has made him an influencer, thought leader, consultant, and speaker for a number of tech and eye care companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Alcon, Luminous, Sight Sciences, Oculus, NewsSight, Osmotica, Patient Pop, and others. In fact, he has been featured on the network TV show The Doctors and has written as a guest author for numerous publications, podcasts, and media outlets.
Welcome, Cam. Oh, and also, we definitely have to talk about this. I just saw a video of you doing OptiLight on Jenny Garth, right? Jenny Garth, was it?
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you guys.
Oh my gosh, by the way, I feel like we totally need to be playing the Beverly Hills 90210 soundtrack. This is amazing.
I just saw this literally the other day and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect for the podcast. How is Jenny Garth? Like, I remember watching her on Beverly Hills 90210. Was she lovely?
You know, what's funny is I actually went to Beverly Hills High School.
Oh,
which is even funnier. And I mentioned that to her and she goes, well, it was West Beverly High in the show, which is amazing. She's just funny and kind of a jokester like that, really entertaining. But it's so wonderful when you see these different movie stars and TV stars, musicians, athletes, and when they come into our practice, how much of a delight they're to be around and how charismatic they are. And it's no surprise why they're so successful is because they're just really good people, and that kind of resonates off of them. And Jenny is no exception. She was just wonderful to be around, and a delight for not only myself but also the team.
Yeah,
it's great when they're really friendly and professional and kind to the doctors, but it's something else when they are that way with the support team. So we truly appreciated that with her and with others as well.
Like I saw that you were on the show The Doctors. You were doing tear care on a patient, weren't you? I think I saw this clip also.
Yep.
That was really fun too. They had reached out and they're right down the street, so it makes it a little easier for us too.
The
commute isn't too bad. We were invited to come on to the show and they asked us to pick one of our own patients. So we had sent out an email campaign, and I think maybe 24 patients had reached out, and the one we chose for the episode, she was such a delight, and she had great, as you saw, great gland expression and great charisma and TV presence as well. So we love all our devices. We carry, I think, 7 in total office-based treatments for dry eye, and Optiolite is one of our favorites and one of our foundational go-to therapies because dry eye is a multifactorial condition, and Optiolite is a multifactorial treatment.
Well, I have questions for you, Cam. And like right now we're like, oh, Cam is doing like, tear care on TV shows, and he's like doing Optiolite for like, stars. Can you talk about maybe your beginnings? Because you didn't always do that. So like, how did you own your own private practice? What was your practice like before you 8 years ago transitioned this into a dry eye center? Like, tell us your background.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, absolute pleasure to be here, and happy to share my backstory. So my family has been in eye care on the eyewear side for about 60 years, 6 decades. And it's just been an incredible journey watching them through the whole process, specifically my father. We have other family members that have joined on the optical side. And I took over on the medical optometry side about 8 years ago and quickly kind of went the path of dry eye because it's something that I've dealt with personally for about 2 decades. As a patient myself, being on Restasis and steroid drops, I have eye allergies, keratoconus, and I have Crohn's disease. So I have a few of the many contributing factors, also a lot of screen time, of course. But it was something of my own struggle, and I wanted to seek out relief. And early on, about a decade ago, I had been to one of the trade shows or conferences and met with Dr. Reinerson, who's the founder of Blefx. And he had treated me personally. So I'm always patient one, whether it's Optiolite or Blefx or tear care. And I see the science, I want to try the treatments. And if I see that it's effective and evidence-based, it's something that we oftentimes will introduce into our practice as kind of like a early start to see how our patients take to it. And these devices, one after the next, just started to really snowball into really resonated with our patients and really snowballed into this wonderful advanced dry eye center that we have. And, we see patients locally, which we love, from 15-year-olds all the way up to 90-year-olds and everything in between.
I like how you do that, that you are patient number one, right? Because then that makes the conversation a lot easier. Over the years, I myself have, been patients to things like thermal pulsation. And when patients ask you about it, that you can really speak, with honesty, like, oh, this feels this way, and really help kind of reduce the anxieties, because we live in eyes all the time, but our patients still have a lot of anxiety around treatments and procedures that we're doing to the eye. So when they know you've been through it, I think it helps to build their confidence in the treatment as well.
Oftentimes they come in with a lot of, they've been kind of defeated, with a sense of defeat and loss of hope. And it's such a comfort to them when we can share that, hey, I won't give up. We're going to help you get through a lot of them have issues with their activities of daily life. They stop driving, they stop working, and many of them have taken leave of absence. And so for us to bring that back to them, oftentimes we don't realize how important our sense of sight is. And to give that back to them is huge. It's such a fulfilling, for me, it's absolutely fulfilling, and I absolutely love it. It's a passion that I have, and to be able to help these patients who've lost hope and improve that for them, and to get their speed scores from 24 to 0, or their tear osmolarity scores from 330s down to the low 300s, and within a short period of time. It's not instant gratification, but within a short period of time, helps significantly. Whether they're an all-star or an A-lister, or all of our patients are A-listers, but all of our VIPs, but whether they're from Hollywood or not, we really take to that. And having these public figures come out and speak about their condition, because we know that there are 30, 40, 50 million patients that have dry eye, and I think that number is an underestimation. It's way higher, especially the patients who have signs but no symptoms yet, especially doing mammography on almost every patient and doing speed scores on every patient. But to have Jennifer Aniston and Ken Jeong and Marissa Tomei and Kylie Richards and most recently Jenny Garth all come out in front of their fans and their followers and their audience is huge, because many of the patients still come in and see all of us, because we still practice, and say, I've never been told I have dry eyes, or they've been mixed diagnosed, or they've never been presented these options. And so we're doing our best one patient at a time, but it's great when these public figures come out openly and share their struggle and stories.
How do these, I saw this other picture of you on your bio, and it's like you doing, I don't know what, something to a patient laying on poolside. You know what I'm talking about on your bio? I'm like, what is that? How do the celebrity, here's my question. How do the celebrities find you? I want a celebrity to find me, and I would also love to do care on a celebrity.
That was a really cool one. So from pre-COVID, we were doing a house call here and there, and we do have some patients who are more hesitant to come out even during COVID. And so that has had a trickle effect. So we were going to patients' homes and doing treatments if we could. That was a MyBuflow treatment that we were doing, which we had coined the eye massage. But excuse me, we essentially we have a great team, fantastic customer service, great equipment. We stress the importance of that white glove Ritz-Carlton care, whether it's any patient that comes to the door, whether it's a comprehensive contact lens patient, glaucoma patient, dry eye patient, but many offices or practices are having our primary eye care, and we do dry eye. We are an advanced dry eye center, and we do primary eye care. Unless we have colleagues that refer to us, we let the patients know that this is what we're going to focus on. You're in great hands with Dr. Smith, and they're going to continue check your eye pressures and prescribe you your glasses and contacts. And even though my family has been in the optical side for so long, that's one thing that we don't do on our side is I don't do optical. So that's given me a lot of time to focus on building our system and our infrastructure as far as how to give patients the best care. And these patients need a lot of time. Some practices aren't built in that way where they can spend an hour or 2 hours. I mean, sometimes we're there till 8 or 9 p.m. because patient comes in for a comprehensive contact lens exam. They transition into a consult, and then they end up doing one or more treatments in the office on the same day. So usually if they're coming in for their follow-up sessions or treatments, it's a lot quicker, maybe about 30 minutes or so. But that initial visit is a huge time investment because we're going through lifestyle habits, makeup, screen time, medications, medical history, giving them tips on how to do things at home, whether it's dietary, supplements, dry eye kits, things of that sort, educating them on these newer customized protocols that we can do for them. And the fact that we do take a holistic approach, and I try to hold off as much as possible on pharmaceuticals, whether it's orals or topicals, as long as I can, unless they have like a flare up or a major episode that requires maybe a 2-week pulse of Lotemax or Isuvis or something along those lines.
Interesting. So who's having the conversations? How does that look? Are they getting passed to different staff members to have different conversations? Because clearly you're not doing all of that talking.
Absolutely. So there's multiple touch points. So when they first come in, every patient's filling out their intake form. That includes a standardized dry questionnaire. Ours that we like to work with is a speed questionnaire because it's short, sweet, and we can track that through time. Then the patient's getting worked up by one of the medical assistants as far as maybe tear osmolarity, an Oculus keratograph to do meibography, and non-invasive tear breakup time. Then the patient's passed to history is collected, of course, with medications and all that fun stuff. And a lifestyle questionnaire is always handed to a dry consult patient, and mostly handed to patients who are pivoted to a dry consult. And then they move on to the doctor, where the doctor is doing the vital dye staining with fluorescein and lissamine green. So we're trying to capture as much information as possible to properly identify, diagnose, and treat the patient. Sometimes patients go, yeah, I went to this one office and they only had a LipiFlow and I wasn't a candidate and there was not much they could do. The reason why we have all the different modalities is if the patient is a keratoconic and they're not a candidate for LipiFlow, we can pivot to iLux, for instance, or if they don't want something inside the eye, they can pivot to tear care as far as a heating component. So there's different connections of why we choose different modalities, or they've researched something and they found us through those platforms. So you're asking, how do we get these patients? Great question. Sometimes it's their personal assistants finding us. Having a great presence on social media is great. We do a fair amount of blogs and content on video content, whether it's on the doctor show or YouTube and things of that sort. Social media is a huge platform to kind of build off of as well. And TikTok, believe it or not, a lot of our videos can go very viral, even if you don't have that many followers. I mean, Dr. Carly Rose is a fantastic example of an amazing provider who has been on fire. And some of my patients, she's referred because they live out here, they follow her on TikTok, and they say they want to visit her. And she's been kind enough to say, Dr. Sani is out in your area in Beverly Hills. So as great as a following that we have and presence online, different platforms can provide different patients. We had one fairly recently her daughter found us. Her daughter lives in New York. The mom has been struggling with dry eye for almost a year and a half. And she's like, hey, I want to send my mom in. If she's a candidate, I want to pay for her LipiFlow. And so we did LipiFlow, but I realized she also has ocular rosacea, and OptiLight was a complementary or synergistic treatment. So we talk about the 3-step plan. Step 1 is if they have biofilm bacterial plaque, is the lid exfoliation with Lefex or Zest. Step 2 is if they have obstructive MGD, is any of the heat modalities or thermal expression devices, TearCare, iLux, LipiFlow being the most common. And then if they have ocular rosacea or telangiectasia or Demodex mites, things of that sort, in order to break the vicious cycle, the OptiLight works beautifully for those patients. And the new gentle handpiece is really wonderful. Our patients, we've had the M22. We're oftentimes very early adopters of these different devices. And I'm a little bit of a tech geek or nerd in my personal life, and I am in the practice as well. And we love our OCT and our Optos and those, Oculus, but on the therapeutic side, it's very important to connect the dots for patients. And patients really take kindly to the OptiLight. And we had its predecessor. It's been almost 4 years, and patients really enjoy the way that felt. But with a new, precise pen-like handpiece, patients have loved that around their eyes. And we also use it off-label for patients with chalazions too, where we put in corneal shields and take that approach, because patients would prefer not to take a surgical route. Oftentimes they've gone in and they've done injections or excisions with a surgeon, and it's like whack-a-mole. They get one injected with steroid or Kenalog or cut out, and then another one shows up, another one, or the same one may come back chronically. So they like that there is this non-surgical, injection-free approach or non-pharmaceutical approach to treating their dry eye, and we've had great outcomes in the last 4 years.
So you were talking about, OptiLight as you have this 3-step approach that you described. Are you ever starting with OptiLight? Like, is this ever your first line treatment? Is to begin there? I mean, like, how do you sort of, Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yes, it can certainly be our go-to, whether the patient seeks us out and wants that, or we find that it's necessary. So as we know, there are multiple comorbidities or contributing factors to dry eye. So that same patient who has significant loss of gland structure and function has ocular rosacea, has blepharitis with, Demodex, has glands that you touch them and then, they're just white and inspissated and toothpaste-like, will most likely benefit from having all 3 of those treatments, say even in the same visit. We kind of call it the red carpet treatment. But yeah, it can be a go-to or foundational treatment. And then we can add in those other treatments when we find necessary. So a good example is if the patient is more severe, we can maybe do all 3 at the first visit. If they're more moderate, we can start with IPL and then incorporate a heat treatment in the middle of their 4 sessions. Because IPL is the OptiLight is 4 sessions, about 2 to 4 weeks apart. Most patients will feel a difference by the 2nd or 3rd visit. And if they feel an improvement before that, amazing. But we oftentimes set the bar kind of high. And if they meet that ahead of time, great. But the longer the duration, severity, and frequency of their symptoms, and the more comorbidities that there are, the more challenging those patients can be. But we've seen some incredible stories. I wrote one for Modern Optometry recently where the patient had 1 Blefx, 1 LipiFlow, and then 3 IPLs, and she went from a 24 speed score out of 28 to 0. And then her tear lab osmolarity scores went from 334, 335-ish down to 304, 303-ish. So within 6 weeks, that tear osmolarity score dropped that significantly. And their speed score within a number of months had dropped down from 24, 18, I think 7 and 0, which is incredible. And she was so happy. She wanted to have, that was only after three OptiLight. So she wanted to have that fourth OptiLight just to kind of secure or enhance her outcomes.
This episode of To The Point is sponsored by Tarsus. Tarsus Pharmaceuticals applies proven science and new technology to revolutionize treatment for patients, starting with eye care. Tarsus is advancing its pipeline to address several diseases with high unmet need across a range of therapeutic categories, including eye care, dermatology, and infectious disease prevention. Tarsus is proud to announce that Xdemvy Lotilaner Ophthalmic Solution 0.25% is now available to prescribe.
So this, I have another question about this, and we had Carly on the podcast like a while back, and she was talking about how she has like different packages for, these treatments. And I think part of the issue can be like the upfront cost for a patient, and depending on the demographic of where you're practicing. But you just talking about this actually just reminded me, I feel like sometimes I'm, I'll speak for myself, sometimes trying to like slide into some of these treatments, and like, I'm almost like, it would be great if I could just give you this, and this, but there's like some hesitancy in me, like, oh, okay, is there a way I could get this without having to do all of these treatments at one time? But maybe that's my issue that I need to get over with the patient.
I do think a lot of times it is the doctor's issue. They feel, when you hear him talk about this, it makes a lot of sense, this 3-step approach. I love it. That you have to target biofilm, you want to unclog the obstruction, and then you want to reduce inflammation. And that's where something like OptiLight is a perfect, way to do that. But I think it is us. I think that we're the barrier. We think I think that you are the barrier. I mean, the more I have the talk and just say, this is what you need, because the other thing that doctors sometimes don't do is diagnose the patient, right? They don't give them the disease. We hear people say that too, like, let them know what the problem is instead of skirt around it. So I think if you just probably approach it like, Dr. Solani's doing, saying, this is what you need. And then the patient can decide when they can invest in what they need.
You know what it is like, I'll do these things. I'll also do these things, but it sounds like what's different here is that, Cam, you do these all at one time. Like, you're like, okay, you need this, and this, let's do it all today. And I never do that. I'm not staffed appropriately to be able to just like do all of that at one visit. But I'm like, okay, let's do lid treatment and this. And then let's see you back and see how things are going. And then if it's not better, let's do tear care. And then we'll come back. And like, as I'm, it seems really obvious now as I'm talking about this with you, and I'm letting you all know how inefficient I seem like I am. But like, I feel like that's how the process kind of goes for.
Well, it's all been a learning curve for me. And so I think the more success stories that we've had, the more confidence that I've had in our protocol, and it continues to evolve. And so we're giving the patients really good homework in a written form, as far as like checking off what things we want them to do at home, what lifestyle clinical pearls are important, the 20-20-20 rule, blink breaks, staying hydrated, things of that sort. But I think early on, like Leslie had mentioned, is laying out what your diagnosis is and what you believe is the best protocol for them is great, as opposed to they come in for BluffX, then you're like, oh, well, let's now do this, let's now do this. Then they might lose confidence. Whereas early on, if you lay out everything and you say, this is what we should do, and then you leave it up to them as far as, okay, this is what I think is most important, and we can do it in a stepwise visit, like one visit. And some patients will say that, is it okay, doc, if I do BluffX today and come back for the other ones? And I say, they work really well synergistically. You've had this problem for X amount of months. It's a chronic and progressive condition that's not going to improve. I've seen my biography. It is concerning to me what I'm seeing. So I think we should get ahead of this. Yeah. And you can only do that much. We have some patients who will outright say, no, I'm not ready. I just want to do the home routine. And then their symptoms get bad enough where they eventually come in, or when they come in for their next annual, they go, yeah, you were right, or your associates were right. I need it now. And so as long as you're laying out, this is what the problem is, and this is what the solutions are, or solutions are, and then you leave it up to them at that point, because you can't force it on them. But we do something similar to, Carly and I have kind of chatted on a few occasions as far as like the package model. And yeah, we do have one at a time, and then we have packages of 4s that we set up for patients who want to who know they're going to need them.
Do you mean packages of 4s with IPL, or packages of
Everything.
4, like 4 different things?
We haven't done mix and matching yet with packages, but we will do sessions of 4, like 4 GLAFXs, 4 IPL, 4 OptiLights, 4 TearCares, et cetera. The reason being that they don't expire, and patients will oftentimes need multiples. And it could be multiples in, 1 a month for X amount of months, depending on how clogged they are or how much inflammation there is, or how quickly the Demodex comes back. Because some of these patients, you will throw everything at them, and it's just, the disease comes back right away because it's been there for so long. And that's why we emphasize, if this is normal and you're this far into the disease process, we want to get you charted right away so we get you to here. But if you're way down the line, if you're at 10% from normal, it's a lot easier to get you back to 0. If you're at 50 or 70%, I can only bring you back incrementally. Just like if their speed score is severe, we can bring them down into the moderate category and mild. That patient I mentioned earlier who went from 24 to 0, that's exceptional. And that's not by any means how often we see things. Although our success rates with our protocol is about 80 to 85% without having to put them on pharmaceuticals, which is
that's
great,
amazing.
Considering that we don't have to worry about side effects, and there's a huge cost expense oftentimes when they're on like a Restasis or Xiidra that may not be covered. I had a patient recently who was trying to get, I forget which one of the pharmaceuticals, but it was going to be $500 for him to get that drop. And so I said, no, we'll pivot to something else, or we'll figure something else out. And he was just insistent because he was an actor who was doing a shoot out in the East Coast, in Atlanta. And so he needed something because they kept putting Lumify Visine in his eyes for the retina. He's like, I don't want to do that. So we put him on Regenerize, and I think for his own peace of mind, he wanted to be on a steroid drop. And I think it was Isubis, actually, that might have been that expensive one.
How long did it take for this perfect patient of yours to go from 24 to 0?
So within 6 weeks, her tear osmolarity score went from 335-ish to about 305. And then for her score to go from 24 to 0, I believe was about 4 months or so. And we tell patients oftentimes, it's not going to be a sprint, it's going to be a marathon. Stick with us. We're going to make sure that we're going to be with you the whole way. We're not going to give up. If we need to pivot to different treatments like neurostimulation or low-level light devices at home, like the Quantum, Neolids, things like that, there are options. And sometimes those will be early on in my protocol. Sometimes it'll be midway. Other times it'll be kind of down the road. So we'll really tweak it depending on the patient's presentation.
I think a couple other real quick things that you make a good point of is you also, so not only are you setting the right expectations for patients, which is super important, like you said, to even build their confidence in you, because when you say, oh, well, this didn't work and now we got to go to this, then they start thinking like, well, is anything going to work? So I think setting the expectations from the start is super important. And then you're also recognizing that it's chronic and that it is a lifetime, problem for patients. You might be able to make them very functional, like you've had great success, but then it's not a one of anything cures all. And by setting them up, even with those packages, it really helps you put that in their mindset, okay, so this is something I'm going to need maybe over the course of this year, maybe over the course of the next 4 years, but, I'm investing in my eyes this way. I think it's brilliant. Some of the things early on that I learned with LipiFlow and thermal pulsation was I felt like we gave up too early on a lot of our patients because you put in the patient that had really obstructive disease with a lot of gland atrophy. You did one LipiFlow and you expected it to fix everything. And then people will be like, nope, that didn't work. Move on to something else. But really, then research started coming out that showed if you just did more of it, it could actually eventually work.
And doing there was a great study I posted recently where in 2020, they did a study of LipiFlow and LipiFlow with manual expression. They're both effective, but doing the manual expression post LipiFlow can extend the positive outcomes longer. So the patient will have more relief for a longer period of time. And we've been doing that for as long as we've had LipiFlow, because when we go back in, LipiFlow's PSI or pressure is about 5 or 6. When we go in with iLux or when we do manual expression, sometimes you can get 3 to 4 times that amount of pressure safely. And we do see a lot of excess gunk that comes out, and we're leveraging the heat that we've had with LipiFlow for 12 minutes to push out more gunk that's been liquefied. So oftentimes we will think there's no silver bullet. And I think we really need to treat it the way we talk about it, where it's a multifactorial condition. And so it's not going to be one thing that's going to fix it. And oftentimes these patients present to us.
I have one more question about your time and, how valuable that is, especially, with the practice that you're running. So how much do you offload to, do you have a dry eye person? Do you have the ocular hygienist that's doing BlephX, or is it usually following, to you and your associates? How does that look?
Great question. I'm glad we circled back to that because I didn't finish the breakdown. So the patient gets checked in with the forms. The medical assistant is handed to the medical assistant for the testing, handed off to the physicians who then make the proper diagnosis and treatment recommendations. Then a treatment counselor comes in with the consent forms and answers any final questions the patient may have. And if they're ready to start the treatment same day or whether they want to schedule back for it, also that depends on scheduling for us as well as the patient if they have to get back to work. Most success we find is converting the patient same day to treatment because life happens and other things come up where they may need to reschedule or they end up having a headache or COVID and other things. And then if they're ready to move forward, great. If they're not, they're given a homework sheet of what they're going to start with, and then we'll see them back in 4, 8, or 12 weeks, depending on their severity. At that follow-up, we'll reassess if they're looking better or feeling better. And if they, for some reason, are worse or the same, then we reemphasize the importance of moving forward treatments. As far as treatments themselves, our philosophy is that we want our physicians doing them, me and my associates doing the actual treatments, because it's a great way to build trust and rapport with our patients. And we charge accordingly. And we also we're there learning as we're treating as well. So after almost every treatment, we're doing expression, whether it's after every Optilight or it's after BlephX or LipiFlow, because we're evaluating to see if they're getting better and we're kind of treating at the same time. So at the moment, we've continued to keep that in the hands of the doctors. I do know some practices that LipiFlow is done with a technician, insertion, removal, the patient's in and out, sometimes without even seeing the doctor. That's not the way that we want to approach it because we're more of a concierge boutique-y practice. And so we want them to know that the physician is there for their safety, for their optimal efficacy, and just for level of comfort and trust.
That actually, you just saying that brings up a good question. So you are expressing after every Optilight? There's all kinds of variations on that. Leslie, don't you do something different? You do after the third? What do you do?
Yeah, I don't know why I do that, but I've developed my own recipe because, some of the studies around just IPL before Optilight would say you got same effect with and without expression. So I kind of do half of my treatments without and half of it with, right in the middle.
So the reason why we do it at every visit is because we're kind of assessing. If the glands look pretty good.
Yes, I like that idea. Mm-hmm.
We're also assessing, and we're planting the seed almost, letting them know that, okay, your glands are clogged. We're going to do a few more of these Optilights with expression. If they're not to where we want them to be at session 2 or 3 or 4, we're going to have to do a heat treatment. And then that specific heat treatment will be what the doctor deems best. I don't like to leave it open-ended and say, hey, we have TearCare and iLux and LipiFlow, you choose. The physician should make the recommendation because the patient doesn't know. It's kind of like saying the cataract surgeon saying, okay, you can pick a Technis or a Symphony or a light adjustable. You pick. The surgeon is going to make the decision and the patient trusts that. So we have to do the same thing, especially if you have options in the practice. But yeah, that's why we do it at every visit. There is a little bit of controversy. Some docs don't do it. I think Art Epstein doesn't do it. I think Laura Perriman and Toyo, just do it at every visit. And that's just a philosophy that we've adapted, especially if you have time. If you have an extra 2 to 5 minutes, it's worthwhile to go in there and expressing, because it's added value too. The patient realizes, okay, the doctor is spending a lot of time with me, and it's what I'm paying is worth what I'm paying. Because OptiLight, they might say, well, I'm getting these light therapies at my dermatologist. I just want to continue doing it. Why can't I just do it there? Well, they're not doing, if we wanted to on the lids, they're not doing expression. They don't have most likely the OptiLight. So all that plays into the psyche. And us being in Beverly Hills, we probably have the highest density of specialists in any other city in the country, maybe second to Manhattan.
Yeah. This, I know we don't have a ton of time left on the call, but one thing we didn't talk about that I do want to talk about is chalazion and like using IPL, like IPL for that. Can you talk about that? Like, are you using this for chronic ones that have been there for a long time? Or are you using this for acute? Like, what are you doing?
So just to clarify, we're doing it off-label. The FDA designation is managing dry eye disease and specifically the signs of dry eye disease, but we're doing it because our office and colleagues around the country have had success with treating chalazions with OptiLight or its predecessor, and really well. The earlier we catch these patients, the better, whether it's an acute chalazion or chronic chalazion. And the patients may have already had an injection or excision, and they're having one pop up in the same area or a different area. We let them know that when we do the OptiLight, we're preserving the glands. We're not just treating that one spot, we're treating all 4 lids and oftentimes the face as well, to try to reduce the risk of, we can't eliminate the risk, we're trying to reduce the risk of these things showing up down the road and trying to get rid of what's going on currently. And we've had really good success with it. But we also set the expectation, like Leslie mentioned earlier, where there's no guarantee. And if towards the 3rd or 4th session, this thing doesn't go away, we'll likely have to refer you out. And more often than not, they get excited. They go, yeah, great, let's take this route. I'd rather not go under the knife.
So is that what it is? You're doing 4 sessions on these, and is that the same for acute versus like chronic?
Yeah, and we'll oftentimes within a few visits, they'll feel the chalazion going away. If they have chalazions, like dry eye, usually happen because the glands are clogged. So we let them know we want to take the same approach as our dry eye disease patients, because dye and lid infections fall into the list of dry eye symptoms. But some patients just care about the chalazion or stye and they want to get rid of that, and that's totally fine. And others understand the bigger picture and they want to continue with the 4. So we leave it up to them in that subset. But traditionally for our MGD patients or our ocular rosacea patients, we say at least 4. And sometimes that the telangiectasia is so deeply rooted that we tell them between 4 and 8 sessions. So again, based off of experience, because we've been doing it for so many years, we know that some patients will respond a lot quicker than others will.
I have a chronic chalazion that I would love for you to take care of.
Yeah, I would love. If that was in Boston, I would love to. I wish I was in the academy to take care of that for it. But I think Laura Perriman will be there, so she might be able to help if you can practice.
Yeah.
They're obnoxious, and we've been seeing a huge increase, and I'm sure you guys are in the same boat, where a huge increase in styes, chalazions, and dry eye during COVID because of the increased digital screen time and the mask-associated dry eye and styes that we've been seeing.
Cam, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell the listeners where they can find you and watch you on Treat Celebrities and on TV shows.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I really have loved you guys and follow your content on social and podcast form and emails, the 2020 Gland. So thank you both. I really appreciate it. And Leslie Odell, the dry eye diva. You guys are fantastic all-stars and champions for dry eye. So thank you for having me on. But to find us would be at Beverly Hills Optometry Advanced Dry Eye Center. On Instagram, Beverly Hills Optometry Dry Eye. I'm on LinkedIn, just my first and last name, Dr. Cambiz Solani. And our website is short for Beverly Hills Eye Guy, bhiguy.com. And again, this has been wonderful, and hopefully we'll cross paths in person very soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm coming to your office next time Jenny Garth is coming in for a follow-up. You can bet on that, Cam. Just make sure you let me know ahead of time. I actually could maybe have all of my college friends there at the same time because we are definitely Jenny Garth fans.
Makes me want to rewatch Beverly Hills 90210, the TV show again. The original.
The original, yeah.
And now for the To The Point wrap-up. When tackling chronic conditions like meibomian gland dysfunction, remember it's good to have a wide variety of treatment options. Also remember the conversation to have with patients to tackle the 3 main areas: biofilm, obstruction, and inflammation. Offer treatments like microexfoliation in office, as well as having cleansers on hand for patients to use for at-home care. Tackle obstruction of the meibomian glands by offering treatments such as thermal pulsation. And let's not forget how to target inflammation of the lid margin, especially for our patients with ocular rosacea. Intense pulse light is a great tool for our dry eye suites. Until next time.